So I'm going to talk about the differences between the ESTP and the ISTP. I'm going to be doing the same thing that I did in the ENTP, INTP, ENFP, INFP videos. Of course, this is going to be about sensors, so it's probably going to have fewer views, but I digress. So the ESTP has inferior introverted intuition, and this gives them that famous courageous quality that we see in Houdini and Patton and MacArthur. Douglas MacArthur, that's his name. I was trying to remember. I thought it was George before. So we see Houdini saying that his, the quality of his life has been, trying to conquer fear, this reticence and observation and withdrawing that comes from introverted intuition, where the subject is sent to devour the object to, keep it back, as we've seen in that cartoon by Michael Pierce that everyone loves. So this gives them this very direct, courageous relationship with the objects. MacArthur is described as the bloodiest, MacArthur or Patton, I can't remember, is described as the bloodiest fighting man in the army. He's always on the front lines, stuff like that. But of course, this can be bad for them because they don't always think through their schemes. The example that Michael Pierce has given is the Douglas MacArthur invasion. A very good example of the overestimation of one's plans, of one's sort of improvisational plans. Then this can sort of be the downfall of some ESTPs at times. And there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about with introverted intuition in the ESTP. So there's this trend in typology recently to talk about the axis instead of the individual functions. And I think it's a good trend. I think it had been missing, but I think it misses some points about the individual functions instead of the axis as a whole. So, in the popular typological imagination, SE and NI would probably be summed up as intensity, and I think that's accurate. But I think another thing that gets lumped in there is singularity. And I think that's actually a facet of introverted intuition, not the axis as a whole. And the difference is sort of subtle, but it's important. So you take someone like Sasha Grey, a porn star who's ESTP, and she has introverted intuition and inferior, and she has this quote where she says that if she did only a couple things, she would limit, or if she focused on only a couple things, she would limit herself in life. And so if you take the more complete axial perspective, that might make her look like an ENTP. But the reason that's indicative of introverted intuition and inferior is introverted intuition is the part that's so singular and focused, not the axis as a whole. So just a little bit about that. And we see the difference in the ISTP, who has introverted intuition in tertiary, not inferior, so it's not wholly repressed, who says that focus and simplicity is one of his mantras. This is from Steve Jobs, so this is very indicative of the TI sort of skeletal perspective and the focus, singular, introverted intuition perspective. And so introverted intuition has sort of eluded people in the ISTP's personality. But I think one of the ways that comes out is their focus, their pithiness, because as Vanderhoop says, introverted intuition has difficulty expressing its ideas, and extroverted intuition is just can just go with it, sort of like I do in these videos. You look at Michael Pierce, who works off these focus scripts, and who uses metaphor to try to better express his idea that sort of come out of the submerged unconscious, whereas the extroverted intuitive, I'm just sort of blah 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 blah. So with the ISTP, we see introverted intuition with their pithiness, where it's absent in the ESTP, and we also see it in their focus and simplicity, making everything count, every every word that they say count. But we also see it in their hate of explaining things. Einstein has that quote where it's like, if you can't explain it to your grandmother, you don't understand it well enough. And then we see Kubrick say that explaining is for teachers, and just he's being sort of whatever towards explaining. And so we see that nice contrast between the INTP, who can sometimes be a little verbose, and the ISTP, who's very pithy. So, like I said in the INTP video, the INTPs are very system building oriented because of that introverted sensation, and the ISTPs are very pithy and focused because of that introverted intuition. Yeah, so now I'm going to talk about the extroverted feeling. So the ISTPs are extroverted, have extroverted feeling repressed, and this gives them a sort of a no bullshit attitude. I don't know if I should swear, whatever. Towards things. There's a quote about Steve Jobs where it's like if you aren't a Steve fan, you say he lacks social graces, but if you are, you say he knew how to cut through the bullshit. And so that's the sort of good part of having extroverted feeling and inferior. You know how to just be direct, but it can also be bad when they lack the diplomatic skills. There are many ISTPs who say they don't do diplomacy and stuff like that. And Ron Paul even talks about his son, Rand Paul, who's, according to Celebrity Types, is an ISFJ. And he says that his method is probably going to be more effective than mine ever was. Namely, his sort of diplomatic approach instead of Ron Paul, who's an ISTP's, non-negotiable stuff. So that's feeling in them. But feeling in the ESTP gives them this charming, sort of rakish quality. Jennifer Garner, maybe, I think, said it about Ben Affleck, who's an ESTP, that he could be charm personified when he wanted to be. And sort of this is the nature of having a tertiary. Celebrity Types talks about it in their article, the puerile nature of the tertiary function. It's sort of slipping out into consciousness and then slipping back into unconsciousness again. This sort of flying too close to the sun, like Icarus, the child archetype, and then getting hit and then falling back down. That according to them is very common in the tertiary function, and I talked about it in the last video where I talked about how the tertiary function is very unique, also a Celebrity Types thing that I was suspicious of at first, but I think is accurate because like a newbie to a field, you don't have all this stuff cluttering your imagination, so you're able to come up with these crazy ideas like Newton and Einstein being very revolutionary. But the point I was making is the ESTP's extroverted feeling is coming in and out of consciousness and importance in the psyche. So they can be, it was said of Bret Easton Ellis that he could be very charming and amicable and affirming, but then he could also, withdraw that feeling and be very, harsh and cruel and cold, which I think is true of the ESTPs. And of course, I think this extroverted feeling being sort of repressed to some degree gives the ETPs, the ENTPs, and the ESTPs their famous antisocial personality style that definitely gets them into trouble. Both the ESTPs and the ENTPs being too confrontational. The ISTPs can be very, very confrontational too, but they're mostly just skeptical and negativistic. The ones I've seen in real life. So yeah, that's the difference between the ESTPs and the ISTPs. Right?